I found out my stepsister Deborah was secretly stealing money at our baby shower. Total fam erupted. I never thought a baby shower could turn into a full-blown disaster, but here we are. My stepsister, Deborah, 43, has always had this way of making everyone think she's the perfect, generous type. Sweet smile, thoughtful gifts, polite laughter. But beneath all that charm, she's been running some kind of personal scam right under our noses. And I finally caught her. The baby shower was at my mom's house, a cozy little place in the suburbs. The backyard was decorated with pastel balloons, a white gazebo, and a massive "It's a Girl" banner. My cousins, aunts, and a couple of close family friends were mingling, sipping on punch, nibbling on mini quiches. I was helping my mom set up the gift table when I noticed Deborah hovering around, casually glancing at the envelopes we were placing in the decorative box. At first, I thought nothing of it. Deborah has always been involved, sometimes too much, but then I caught a glimpse of her slipping something small into her purse. My heart dropped. I approached cautiously. "Deborah, what are you doing with that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice low. "Oh, just checking if the envelopes are secure," she said, all wide-eyed and innocent. But her hands were shaking slightly, and she avoided eye contact. I frowned. "Deb, seriously, just leave it. These are gifts for the baby, not whatever that is." Her laugh was too forced, high-pitched. "Relax, it's nothing, just making sure nothing gets lost." I didn't bite, but I backed off for the moment because, well, this was a baby shower. I didn't want a scene yet. I decided to watch from a distance. As the party went on, she kept popping back to the envelope box, touching it, fiddling with it, always glancing around to see if anyone was watching. Then my cousin Max, who's always suspicious of Deborah's too perfect a persona, leaned over and whispered, "Hey, you noticing that too? Something's off." I nodded subtly. By the time cake was being served, I'd gathered enough courage to confront her again. I quietly pulled her aside near the gazebo. "Deborah, I saw you take money from the envelopes. How could you?" My voice cracked. Her face went pale, and for a moment I thought she might deny it. Instead, she smirked. "Oh, don't be dramatic. It's not like anyone will miss it. It's just a few envelopes." My blood ran cold. This wasn't a joke. This was straight up fraud. And at the baby shower, no less. Before I could respond, my mom appeared, holding a gift bag. "What's going on here?" she asked. And that's when the real chaos began. Mom's eyes darted between Deborah and me, and I could feel the tension snap through the warm, pastel air like a lightning bolt. "Deborah, is this true?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. She looked like she couldn't even process the words. Deborah shrugged, still smirking, like she thought this was some kind of game. "Mom, it's not a big deal. I was just borrowing. I'll pay it back," she said, as casually as if she'd just borrowed a pen. "Borrowing?" I shouted, my hand shaking. "Deborah, these are gifts. People gave these for the baby. You can't just take them." The backyard went quiet. Even the neighbours who had wandered over to peek at the decorations were staring. My cousin Max stepped forward. "Wait, are you telling me she's literally stealing from her own family at a baby shower?" His voice was incredulous, like he couldn't believe it either. Deborah waved him off, still maintaining this irritating air of superiority. I said I'll put it back. Why is everyone acting like it's the end of the world? Because it is the end of the world, Deborah. I snapped, my anger boiling over. You're not just messing with money, you're messing with trust. People feel safe giving gifts at family events because they trust each other. My mom's face twisted, a mixture of disbelief and sadness. "Deborah, I raised you better than this. You're taking advantage of people who love you, and now you're hiding behind excuses." At that, Deborah's smile faltered for a second, but then she tried to cover it. "Mom, I didn't think anyone would notice. It's just a couple $100. It won't hurt anyone." I could feel my pulse in my temples. I wanted to scream, but I had to stay composed. "A couple $100, Deb, that's everyone's gifts. That's my cousin's present, my aunt's present, that's the baby's first toy money." Max, who had been shaking his head the whole time, finally spoke up louder. "Deborah, this isn't about the money. It's about you exploiting your own family for profit. How could you even think this is okay?" Deborah's defences finally cracked. She looked around, realising maybe, just maybe, her perfect little facade was slipping. "Fine," she muttered, her voice barely audible. I didn't mean to, I just said." And then she froze, her eyes darting toward my mom, who had quietly stepped closer, holding the decorative envelope box in her hands. "You give me the box," Mom said firmly. Deborah hesitated, but then, shaking, she handed it over. In sight, sure enough, several envelopes were missing. Some were crumpled in Deborah's purse. Seeing them there, right in front of me, made my stomach churn. I felt betrayed, embarrassed, and furious all at once. The party, which had been filled with laughter, chatter, and the smell of vanilla cupcakes, felt suddenly suffocating. People were whispering, glancing at Deborah with disgust. My mom looked like she was going to cry. I clenched my fist, trying to calm down. And then Deborah, in a last-ditch effort at defiance, muttered, "I'll give it back, don't make a scene." But the scene had already happened, and there was no going back. By the time Deborah muttered about returning the money, the backyard had become tense enough to choke on. Even the soft hum of the garden fountain sounded accusatory. Mom held the envelope box tightly, like she was trying to protect it from further borrowing. I could see the strain in her eyes, the way she was struggling to keep her voice steady. "Deborah," she said, her voice trembling but firm, "I need you to explain everything, right now." Deborah crossed her arms and looked around, clearly weighing her options. "Lydia, it was just temporary. I needed some cash, okay? Things have been tight, and I didn't want to ask anyone for help." "Temporary?" Max barked, taking a step closer. "You mean stealing from your own family while we're celebrating a baby shower is temporary?" He threw his hands up. "Do you even realize how messed up this is?" I could feel my own anger bubbling over. "Deborah, people trusted you. Everyone here thought you were helping celebrate the baby, not lining your pockets. How could you even think this is okay?" Deborah flinched at my words but quickly covered it with a defensive smirk. It's not like I took everything. It's just a few envelopes. People can afford it. Relax. Can afford it? I repeated incredulously. These are gifts, Deb, for the baby, not some petty savings you can borrow whenever you feel like it. At this point, my Aunt Linda, who had been quietly watching from the gazebo, finally stepped in. Deborah, this isn't just about money. You've crossed a line that you may never be able to come back from. Do you understand that? Deborah opened her mouth, probably to argue, but then something shifted. For the first time, she looked truly vulnerable. I didn't think anyone would notice. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, she whispered. Her voice cracked, and I saw tears threatening to spill. But I didn't feel sympathy, at least not yet. Not after all this. I did not mean to hurt anyone. I asked, my voice shaking with rage and disappointment. Deborah, this is exactly how you hurt people. You're taking advantage of your family. That's betrayal. Max, now pacing, muttered, I've always known she's slippery with money, but seeing it happen like this, well. The guests had mostly drifted to the edges of the yard, whispering among themselves. I could feel the judgment like a physical weight pressing down on us. My mom finally took a deep breath, trying to regain control. Deborah, you are going to return every single envelope, apologize to everyone, and we're going to figure out a way for you to make amends. This ends now. Deborah swallowed hard, nodding reluctantly. Okay, I return it. I exhaled, a mix of relief and lingering fury washing over me. The damage was done, the trust was shattered. But at least, for now, the fraud was exposed, and she couldn't hide it any longer. As the party limped on, with awkward small talk replacing the cheerful chatter from before, I realized something. This was bigger than money. Deborah's actions had shown a side of her no one had wanted to see, and now our family had to confront the uncomfortable truth. Financial exploitation wasn't something we could just forgive with a smile and cupcakes. After Deborah handed over the envelopes, the tension in the backyard didn't dissipate, it thickened. The air felt heavy, like the balloons themselves were drooping under the weight of judgment. Mom counted the money carefully, muttering under her breath. Some of the cash had been crumpled, a few bills folded into strange creases as if Deborah had stuffed them hurriedly into her purse. Deborah, Mom said finally, looking up with a stern expression, this isn't just about returning money. You need to understand the damage you've caused. Everyone here trusted you. Deborah's eyes flicked around the yard. A few relatives avoided her gaze completely, whispering behind their hands. My cousin Max wasn't holding back. He stepped right up, shaking his head. I don't get it. How do you sleep at night knowing you're exploding family? This isn't just a minor mistake, you planned this. Deborah looked corner, her usual arrogance gone. She muttered, I didn't plan anything. I needed the cash. It's not like I wanted anyone to find out. Not want anyone to find out. I snapped, stepping closer. You thought this was harmless? You thought this was funny? Deborah, these aren't strangers. This is our family. Mom sighed, shaking her head, clearly trying to keep her composure. Deborah, this has to stop now. You need to face consequences. No more pretending. No more hiding behind excuses. You violated our trust, and trust isn't something you can just buy back with money. At that moment, my Aunt Linda spoke again, her tone quiet but cutting. Deborah, I don't know what's happening in your life that made you think this was okay, but stealing at a baby shower, that's low. Even if you return the money, people will remember. Their reputation here, our family's faith in you is gone until you prove otherwise. Deborah's shoulders slumped. For the first time, she didn't have a snappy comeback. She didn't smile or laugh it off. Instead, she nodded, almost in defeat. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. Max, still visibly upset, muttered, Yeah, you'd better. And this isn't over. People don't just forget when you exploit their trust. I could feel the anger simmering inside me, but also a strange sense of relief. The truth was out, and while the shock and embarrassment were intense, at least no one was being deceived anymore. Mom decided to salvage what was left of the party. Okay, everyone, let's try to focus on celebrating the baby. Deborah, you stay out of the gift area. That's final. Deborah nodded silently, avoiding eye contact with everyone. She seemed smaller somehow, weighed down by the exposure of her actions. As the day went on, the mood remained awkward. Some relatives quietly discussed the incident, while others tried to distract themselves with the baby gains and snacks. But the damage was done. The laughter and warmth that usually accompanied family events were replaced with cautious glances and whispered judgments. I realized that exposing Deborah's fraud wasn't just about the money. It was about protecting the family, about making sure everyone understood that exploitation wouldn't be tolerated, and that even someone as seemingly perfect as a stepsister could betray your trust. And as I looked at Deborah sitting quietly on the edge of the yard, I knew that the baby shower would be remembered not for joy, but for the day our family's trust was shattered. By late afternoon, the party had shifted into quiet tense hum. The cupcakes and punch were barely touched. People whispered in corners, casting sideways glances at Deborah, who had moved to the far end of the yard, arms crossed, staring at the grass. You could feel the awkwardness radiating off her like heat. My cousin Max, never one to hold back, finally confronted her directly. He leaned down, voice low but sharp. Deborah, we need to talk, seriously talk, not just the quick apologies. You need to explain why you thought this was okay. Deborah hesitated, her lips pressed together. Then she finally sighed, a long, heavy breath that seemed to carry months of guilt. I've been struggling, okay? Money's been tight, and I didn't know how to ask for help. I thought if I took a little, no one would notice, and I could put it back before anyone found out. Max's eyes narrowed. That doesn't make it okay. You were willing to betray every single one of us, your family, for a few $100s. You knew it would hurt us if we found out. I know, she whispered, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. I feel awful. I didn't think about the baby, about anyone else. I was just thinking about myself. I couldn't stay silent. Deborah, this isn't just about you. It's about trust, respect, and the fact that we all came here to celebrate something beautiful, and you tried to steal from that moment. Do you understand? She nodded, finally, a little shakily. Yes, I understand. I'm sorry. I really am. I'll make it right, whatever it takes. At that, my mom came over, her voice calm but resolute. Deborah, the first step is to return the money to everyone. Then we'll figure out a plan so you don't put yourself or our family in this position again. Deborah swallowed hard and began going from guest to guest, handing back envelopes and muttering apologies. Some people accepted them graciously, while others, like my Aunt Linda, gave a firm nod but didn't speak. It was clear that trust would take much longer to rebuild than the envelopes themselves. Even as she returned the money, I noticed small gestures of acknowledgement, handshakes, brief smiles. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition that she was trying. Max leaned over to me quietly. Honestly, I don't know if she deserves it yet, but at least she's facing it. That's more than I expected from her. I nodded, watching Deborah sitting back down after returning the last envelope. She looked exhausted, emotionally drained, maybe for the first time really seeing the consequences of her actions. The baby shower continued awkwardly. People clung to small conversations, avoided the gift area, and whispered about what had happened. But the tension slowly eased as the hours passed, the initial shock giving way to cautious acceptance. I realised that even though Deborah had committed fraud and financially exploited her own family, this exposure had forced her to confront her actions in a way she might never have done otherwise. And while the trust wasn't fully restored, the first cracks of accountability had begun to show. For the first time that day, I allowed myself a deep breath. The baby was still innocent, the celebration still mattered, and maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what had been broken. The day dragged on, and even though Deborah had returned the money, the atmosphere never fully lifted. The soft hum of the garden fountain couldn't drown out the awkward tension between family members. Conversations were cautious smiles forced. You could almost see the trust hanging in the air, fragile as a soap bubble. Deborah stayed on the edge of the yard, watching the festivities with a kind of silent remorse. She wasn't loud. She wasn't making excuses anymore. She was just there, a shadow of the confident, charming persona she'd always worn. I could see her staring at the baby's little pink dress, the tiny shoes, and I wondered if the reality of what she'd done was finally sinking in. My Aunt Linda pulled me aside quietly. You know, this is going to take time. Even if she tries to make amends, the family is going to remember she broke a bond, and bonds aren't fixed overnight. I nodded grimly. I know, but at least she's facing it now. That's something. It's more than I expected. Max came over, shaking his head. I don't get how someone can be so selfish. I mean, she stole from her own stepsister's baby shower, and she had the nerve to smirk at first. What was she thinking? I think she thought no one would notice, I said, feeling a mix of frustration and pity. But the thing is, she did notice, and she's paying for it now, emotionally at least. Deborah eventually approached us, her hands wringing nervously. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she said quietly, her voice shaky. I know saying it doesn't erase anything, but I want to try to do better. I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be someone who takes advantage of the people she loves. Max looked skeptical, but I placed a hand on Deborah's shoulder. Acknowledging it is the first step. You can't undo the past, but you can try not to repeat it. That's all we can ask. Mom came over, placing a hand on Deborah's back. You need to rebuild trust, Deb, and that's going to take time, effort, and transparency. We'll help guide you, but you have to want it. Deborah nodded, tears forming. I want it. I really do. The rest of the party moved forward cautiously. The baby received her gifts, albeit with some awkward moments. Family members mingled, some avoiding Deborah, some cautiously engaging with her. It wasn't perfect, and the shadow of the day's betrayal lingered, but there was a sense of cautious reconciliation beginning to take shape. I realised that exposing the fraud, as harsh and painful as it had been, forced the family to confront uncomfortable truths. It also forced Deborah to confront herself. For the first time, she seemed genuinely aware of the impact of her actions, and that awareness might just be the first step toward real change. By the end of the day, as the sun dipped behind the trees, the backyard looked peaceful again, almost normal. But I knew that things had shifted forever. Trust had been broken, and even as some steps toward redemption were taken, the memory of Deborah's actions would linger, a cautionary tale woven into the family's story. By the evening, the party was winding down. The last of the cupcakes were eaten, and most guests had politely said their goodbyes. The backyard, once vibrant with laughter and pastel decorations, now felt quiet, reflective, almost solemn. Even the wind seemed to whisper reminders of the day's tension. Deborah sat on a garden bench, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked smaller, humbled, a stark contrast to the confident woman who had arrived that morning. I approached her cautiously, unsure if she wanted to be confronted again or if she even deserved it. Deborah, I said softly, sitting beside her, I know today was rough, but owning up to what you did, returning the money, that was the right step. It's not forgiveness yet, but it's a start. She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I know, I wish I could take it all back. I feel awful, not just for the money, but for breaking everyone's trust, especially yours, she added quietly, looking at me. I sighed, the anger from earlier still simmering but tempered by a sense of relief. It hurt, yeah, but at least now we know who you really are, and you're not running from it anymore. That's something, I guess. Mom walked over, placing a comforting hand on Deborah's shoulder. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight, but the fact that you've acknowledged your mistakes means we have a chance to move forward. You need to stay transparent and patient. The family will watch, and they'll see if you're serious about making amends. Deborah nodded again, this time with a firmer resolve. I will, I promise. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back trust. Max, standing nearby with a still skeptical expression, muttered, I'll believe it when I see it. Actions speak louder than apologies. Exactly, I agreed. Talking isn't enough. You've got to prove it. As the last guest left, the house felt emptier but somehow calmer. The immediate chaos had passed, but the aftershocks of Deborah's fraud would linger for months. Yet there was a strange, tentative sense of closure. The baby's gifts were restored, the money returned, and while some relationships were bruised, the family had faced the betrayal head-on. I looked at Deborah one last time that evening. She was quiet, introspective, and genuinely remorseful, a side of her I hadn't fully seen before. Maybe this was the wake-up call she needed. Maybe she would change. And maybe, in time, some trust could be rebuilt. I realised that this baby shower, which should have been a joyful celebration, had become a turning point. It exposed lies, revealed true character, and forced accountability. and as much as the day had been painful, it had also set the stage for a new beginning for Deborah and for all of us. As I left the backyard, the twilight casting long shadows over the pastel decorations, I felt a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and guarded hope. The family had survived the storm, and while the wounds would take time to heal, at least the truth was out, and that, I decided, was worth something.